I am 38 years old and a mother of two. My entire life, I have tried to be the perfect daughter. I followed the rules. I got good grades. I went to the college they approved of and pursued a career they considered respectable. I never asked for much, always careful not to be a burden. My brother, Liam, was the opposite. He was the charming screw-up, the one who could do no wrong even when everything he did was wrong. My parents poured their money, their time, and their endless forgiveness into him. I was the responsible one, the reliable one, the one they took for granted. I thought that was just my role in the family. I had made my peace with it. I had my own life, my own wonderful husband, Mark, and two beautiful children, Maya and Ben. I did not need their approval anymore. At least, that is what I told myself. That all changed the day the package arrived. It was a stiff, formal manila envelope. My name and address were typed on a label. The return address was a law firm I did not recognize. It felt cold and impersonal. I remember standing in my hallway, the mail still in my other hand, staring at it. There was a strange feeling in my stomach, a knot of dread that I could not explain. I almost put it aside to open later, but something compelled me to deal with it right then. I walked into the kitchen and set the other mail on the counter. I picked up a knife and slit the envelope open carefully. My hands were steady, but my heart was starting to beat a little faster. Inside, there were several pages clipped together. The top page was a letter. It was printed on heavy, cream-colored paper, the kind my mother loved. It was from my parents, but it was not in their handwriting. It was typed like a business letter. It began without any greeting. "No, dear Sarah," just straight to the point. The words were sterile and cruel. It stated that they had recently updated their last will and testament. It went on to say that they had made the difficult decision to formally disinherit my children, Maya and Ben. It said they wanted me to be aware of this change to prevent any confusion or challenges to the will upon their passing. It was signed, their typed names at the bottom. Robert and Helen, not Mom and Dad. My breath caught in my throat. I read the sentence again. Formally disinherit my children. The words did not make sense. Disinherit me, maybe. I could almost understand that in some twisted way. But my children? Maya was 8. Ben was 6. They were just kids. They adored their grandparents. What had they ever done? I felt a wave of nausea. I leaned against the counter, my knuckles white as I gripped the edge. My mind was racing, trying to find a reason. Any reason that would make this understandable. There was none. This was not a decision. This was an attack. Beneath the letter was another document. It had a blue backing and a red seal. It was a notarized legal document. I unfolded it. It was a single page, an excerpt from their new will. It was the specific clause that named my children and then explicitly excluded them from any inheritance. It stated that their share, which would have passed to them, was to be redirected to their uncle, my brother, Liam. It was filled with legal jargon, but the message was brutally clear. And then I saw the handwritten note at the bottom. It was in my mother's elegant looping script, the same script from all my childhood birthday cards. It said, "So you understand this is final and they are considered worthless to us." Worthless. The word slammed into me like a physical blow. I could not breathe. My vision swam. Worthless. They had called my children worthless. My sweet, funny, loving children. My daughter who made them paintings, and my son who always ran to hug them the moment they walked in the door. They had taken the time to write that word, to make sure I saw it, to make sure it hurt as much as possible. They had it notarized. They had a lawyer send it. They wanted to wound me in the most profound way they could by aiming at the two people I loved more than anything in the world. They had sent me proof. Not just of the change in their will, but of the blackness in their hearts. I stood there for what felt like an hour, just holding the papers. The house was silent. Mark was at work. The kids were at school. It was just me and this poison they had sent into my home. The shock began to recede, and in its place, a cold, hard anger started to form. It was an anger I had never felt before. I had swallowed their casual dismissals my whole life. I had accepted their favoritism. I had let their little cuts and slights slide off me because I thought it was the price of peace. But this was different. This was not a slight. This was a declaration of war. And they had aimed it at my children. That was a line they should have never, ever crossed. I folded the papers neatly. I put them back in the envelope. My hand was no longer shaking. It was perfectly still. They had made a very, very big mistake. They thought they were showing me how worthless my children were to them. I decided in that quiet kitchen that I was going to show them exactly what my children were worth to me. I placed the envelope on the corner of the kitchen table where I would see it. I did not want to hide it. I wanted it to be a reminder of what they had done. I spent the next few hours on autopilot. I made a grocery list. I tidied up the living room. I did all the normal, mundane things a person does on a Tuesday afternoon. But my mind was a whirlwind. Every time I looked at that envelope, the cold anger solidified a little more. It was becoming a foundation. It was becoming a plan. They had used a lawyer and a notary to make their cruelty official. They thought their money and their legal documents made them powerful. I was about to find out if they were right. I was not going to cry. I was not going to scream. I was going to be calm. I was going to be methodical. And I was going to dismantle their world just as they had tried to dismantle mine. When Mark came home, I was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the envelope. He took one look at my face and knew something was wrong. "Sarah? What is it? What's happened?" he asked, dropping his keys on the counter. I did not say anything. I just pushed the envelope toward him. He picked it up, his brow furrowed in confusion. He pulled out the papers and began to read. I watched his face change. The confusion melted into disbelief, and then his expression hardened into a mirror of my own anger. He read the letter, then the legal document. He saw the handwritten note at the bottom. He looked up at me, his eyes blazing. "They what?" he said, his voice low and dangerous. "They sent it through a lawyer," I said, my voice flat. They wanted to make sure I understood. "Worthless?" he whispered, shaking his head. "They called our children worthless?" I nodded, a single sharp movement. That one word was the core of it all. It was the poison dart they had aimed so carefully. Mark sat down heavily in the chair across from me. He reached out and took my hand. His was warm and strong. "Okay," he said, his voice firm. "Okay, we need to think. What do we do?" "I do not know what we do yet," I replied honestly. "But I know what I am not going to do. I am not going to let this go. I am not going to let them do this to Maya and Ben. This is not about the money. I do not care about their money. This is about the principle. This is about them trying to erase my children." "I am with you," he said, squeezing my hand. 100%. Whatever you decide, I am with you. We are a team. Hearing him say that made the foundation of my anger feel even stronger. I was not alone in this. They had not just attacked me. They had attacked my husband, our family, the life we had built together, a life that was so much happier and healthier than the one I had grown up in. They were trying to poison our world with the misery of theirs. "I need to call them," I said. "I need to hear them say it." "Are you sure?" Mark asked, his concern evident. "You do not have to put yourself through that." "Yes," I said. "I am sure. I need to understand what they are thinking. I need to know what their story is, and I want them to know that I got their message." I stood up and walked over to the phone. My heart was pounding now, a drumbeat of anticipation and fury. I took a deep breath, held it, and then let it out slowly. I dialed my mother's number. She answered on the second ring, her voice bright and cheerful as if nothing was wrong. As if she had not just lit a match and thrown it into the middle of my life. Sarah, how lovely to hear from you, she chirped. The sheer normalcy of it was jarring. For a second, I almost faltered. It was the voice I had known my whole life, the voice that had once meant comfort and safety. Now it was the voice of my enemy. I got your package, I said. There was no warmth in my voice. There was no room for it. There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. The cheerfulness in her voice vanished, replaced by a cool defensiveness. Oh, she said. Well, we thought it was best to be direct. No room for misunderstandings that way. You thought it was best to send a lawyer's letter to your daughter to tell her that her children are worthless to you? I asked. My voice was shaking slightly now, not with sadness, but with rage. I was holding it in, but it was leaking out. Now, Sarah, do not be dramatic, she said, her tone condescending. That is not what the letter said. It is a simple legal matter. Your father and I have the right to decide where our assets go. I am not talking about the letter, I said, my voice dropping. I am talking about the note you wrote at the bottom, the one that said Maya and Ben are worthless. There was another silence. This one was longer. I could hear her breathing. I could picture her in her pristine living room, surrounded by expensive furniture, her face a mask of composure. She was probably deciding which lie to tell. That was a poor choice of words, she finally said, her voice clipped. I was upset. You have been very distant lately. Sarah, you have pulled your family away from us. This is a consequence of your actions. My actions? I repeated, my voice rising despite my efforts to control it. What actions? Bringing my children to your house every holiday? Calling you every Sunday? Sending you photos and updates? Forgetting your favoritism toward Liam time and time again? What actions have I taken besides trying to maintain a relationship with you? You have a very negative attitude, she shot back. You always have. You resent your brother. You resent the help we give him. You have a chip on your shoulder. We decided we are not going to reward that kind of behavior. The inheritance is for those who appreciate this family. It was a fire hose of blame, a classic tactic of hers. When cornered, attack. I felt my resolve harden. This was not a conversation. This was a performance. She was reading from a script she had rehearsed. So you are punishing my 6-year-old and my 8-year-old for my negative attitude? I asked, my voice now ice cold. Does that sound reasonable to you, Mom? They are your children, she said coldly. They are your responsibility. Your father and I are focusing our resources on Liam. He needs our help. He is building a future. Liam was 35 and had never held a job for more than a year. The future he was building was a deck on the back of his house that my father was paying for. The lie was so blatant, so absurd, it almost made me laugh. I see, I said. So this is about Liam. You are cutting out my children to give more to him. It is our money, Sarah, she said, her voice sharp and final. We can do with it as we please. The decision is made. We sent you the letter so you would not have any false hope. Oh, I do not have any false hope, I said. The rage had cooled now, settling into something solid and heavy in my chest. You have made things perfectly clear. You and Dad have made it very, very clear how you feel about my family, about my children. Good, she said. Then there is nothing more to discuss. No, I said slowly. I suppose there is not. I hung up the phone. I did not slam it down. I placed it gently back in its cradle. I turned to look at Mark. His face was a thundercloud. I cannot believe her, he said. The nerve, to blame you, to say you have a negative attitude. It is what they do, I said, my voice hollow. It is what they have always done. Anything that goes wrong, it is my fault. Any uncomfortable feeling they have, it is my fault. I am the family's scapegoat. Not anymore, Mark said, his jaw tight. This ends now. They do not get to do this to you. They do not get to do this to our kids. I nodded. I know. I walked back to the table and picked up the envelope again. I looked at the notarized document, at my mother's cruel handwriting. They thought this piece of paper gave them power. They thought it was an ending. They had no idea that it was just the beginning. I had their declaration in my hands. Their signed, notarized, legally delivered declaration of malice. And I was going to use it. I did not know how yet, but I knew with absolute certainty that this document, the one they sent to hurt me, was going to be their downfall. The next day, I called my brother. I had to. I needed to know where he stood in all of this. Was he a willing participant, or was he just the clueless beneficiary of their cruelty? Part of me hoped for the latter. It was a small, naive part, the part that still remembered the little boy I grew up with, not the man he had become. He answered his phone with his usual casual, "Hey, what's up?" "Liam, it is Sarah," I said. "Hey, sis, how are you?" he said, his voice breezy and cheerful. It was the same tone my mother had used. It set my teeth on edge. "I am not great, actually," I said. "I received a letter from Mom and Dad's lawyer yesterday." There was a slight hesitation. "Oh yeah?" he said, his voice a little less breezy now. "What about?" "You know what about, Liam," I said. "It was about the will. It was about them disinheriting my children and giving their share to you." He let out a long sigh. It was a sigh of practiced weariness, the sigh of someone who was constantly put upon. "Look, Sarah," he said, "I told them not to do it like that. I told them it was harsh." So he knew. He knew before I did. He knew, and he did nothing. The small, naive part of me shriveled up and died. "You told them it was harsh?" I repeated. "That is it? You did not tell them it was wrong? You did not tell them it was cruel and monstrous to punish two little kids?" "Hey, come on," he said, getting defensive. "What was I supposed to do? It is their money. They can do what they want with it. I cannot control them." "You could have said you would not accept it," I said, my voice quiet. "You could have told them that if they cut out Maya and Ben, they had to cut you out too. You could have stood up for your niece and nephew." He laughed, a short, bitter sound. "And end up with nothing? Sarah, be realistic. I need their help." "You do not. You and Mark are fine. You have your house, your jobs. I am still trying to get on my feet." "You have been getting on your feet for 20 years, Liam," I shot back. "And they have been holding you up the entire time. This is not about need. This is about greed. You are happy to take my children's inheritance." "It was never their inheritance," he said, his voice turning nasty. "It is Mom and Dad's money. They earned it, they get to choose, and they chose me. Maybe if you were a little more grateful, a little less, you know, bitter all the time, they might have chosen you too." It was the same argument, the same words. He and my mother were singing from the same song sheet. I was bitter. I was ungrateful. I was the problem. My children were just collateral damage in their twisted family drama. "I see," I said. "So you're fine with this. You are happy with the arrangement." "I did not say I was happy," he whined. "I am just saying I understand it. You made your choices, Sarah. You moved away. You built your own life. You did not want to be a part of this family. So why do you suddenly care about the money?" "I told you, it is not about the money," I said, my patience gone. "It is about the message. It is about what they said about my kids. And you know what? You are right. I did build my own life. And it is a damn good life. It is a life free of this poison. So thank you for making it clear where you stand. It is good to know." "What is that supposed to mean?" he asked, a hint of alarm in his voice. "It means I am done," I said. "I am done with all of you." I hung up the phone. My hand was trembling this time. The conversation with my mother had been infuriating. The conversation with my brother was heartbreaking. He was not just an enabler. He was a willing accomplice. He would happily step over my children to get what he wanted. He was just like them. That night, Mark and I sat on the couch after the kids were in bed. The house was quiet again. I told him about the call with Liam. He listened patiently, his expression growing darker with every word. "So he is in on it," Mark said when I finished. It was not a question. "He is in on it," I confirmed. He tried to play dumb at first, but it did not last long. He thinks I am being unrealistic. He thinks I should just accept that his needs are more important than my children's existence. Mark shook his head in disgust. "They have broken him," he said softly. "They have made him so dependent on them that he has no moral compass of his own." "Or maybe he never had one," I said. "Maybe I just never wanted to see it." I leaned my head on his shoulder. I felt exhausted. The anger was still there, but it was buried under a layer of deep, profound sadness. My entire family of origin was rotten. There was nothing left to save. "So what now?" Mark asked. "We cut them off. All of them. No more calls, no more holidays. We protect our kids from them." "Yes," I said. "That is the first step. That is the easy part. But it is not enough. They sent me that document for a reason. They wanted to hurt me, but they also wanted to show me that they have all the power, that their money makes the rules. I cannot let that be the end of the story." "What are you thinking?" he asked. "I do not know yet," I admitted. "But there has to be something. They are so arrogant. They are so sure they are untouchable. People like that. They make mistakes. They get sloppy. They think the rules do not apply to them." I sat up, my mind starting to work again. The sadness was receding, and the strategic part of my brain was coming back online. My mother said they were focusing their resources on Liam. That sounds like more than just the will. It sounds like they are giving him money now. "They have always given him money," Mark pointed out. "I know," I said. But the way she said it, it was different. It was like a strategy. And Dad, he is a meticulous planner. He is a businessman. He does not just hand out cash. He creates structures, trusts, investments, things like that. A memory flickered in my mind. It was from years ago, at a family Christmas party. I was in college. My great-aunt Carol was there. She was my grandmother's sister, a sharp, no-nonsense woman who I had always liked. She had pulled me aside. "Your grandfather was a very smart man," she had told me. "He made sure everyone was taken care of. Everyone. Do not you ever forget that." At the time, I had thought she was just making small talk. But now, he made sure everyone was taken care of. "Mark," I said, my voice excited. "My grandfather, my mom's dad. He was the one with the real money. My dad made a good living. But the foundation of their wealth came from my grandfather. He passed away when I was a teenager." "Okay," Mark said, listening intently. "I remember my great-aunt Carol telling me once that he made sure everyone was taken care of." She emphasized the word everyone. What if he set something up? A trust. Something my parents cannot just change with a new will? It was a long shot. A very long shot. But it was the first glimmer of hope I had felt since opening that envelope. It was a thread, and I was going to pull on it. "How would we even find out?" Mark asked. "Aunt Carol," I said. "She is in her late 80s now, but her mind is still as sharp as a tack. She lives in a retirement community a few hours away. She never liked my father very much. She always said he was too controlling." "It is worth a try," Mark said, a smile slowly spreading across his face. "It is more than a try. It is a plan." "It is a plan," I agreed. A new feeling was blooming in my chest, pushing aside the grief and anger. It was determination. They had sent me a legal document to end a conversation. I was going to find another legal document to start a new one. The next Saturday, I drove to see my great-aunt Carol. I had called her ahead of time, simply saying I wanted to visit and ask her some questions about the family. She had sounded pleased to hear from me. I did not mention the will or the letter. I did not want to put her on the spot over the phone. This was a conversation I needed to have in person. Her retirement community was a pleasant place, with manicured lawns and cheerful buildings. Aunt Carol's apartment was small but immaculate, filled with books and old photographs. She greeted me with a warm hug. She was a tiny woman, but her handshake was firm and her eyes were bright and intelligent. "Sarah, you look tired," she said, peering at me over the top of her glasses. She never minced words. "It has been a stressful week, Aunt Carol," I admitted. "Your mother, I assume?" she said with a sigh, leading me to a comfortable armchair. "She has been causing stress since 1965. Some things never change. Now, what is on your mind?" I took a deep breath. "I need to ask you about Grandpa," I began. "Specifically about how he set things up after he was gone. His estate." Aunt Carol's eyes narrowed slightly. "That is a specific question," she said. "Why are you asking about that now?" I decided to be honest with her. I trusted her. I pulled the manila envelope out of my bag and handed it to her. "My parents sent me this," I said. She took it and read the contents, her expression growing colder with each page. When she got to the handwritten note, she made a small sound of disgust. "Worthless," she whispered, her voice filled with contempt. "That has Helen's fingerprints all over it. She always had a cruel streak." She placed the papers carefully on the table beside her. "That girl, my niece. She was always so concerned with appearances, with control, and your father only encouraged it." She looked at me, her eyes soft with sympathy. "I am so sorry, Sarah. No child should have to see something like this. Especially not about their own children." "Thank you," I said, my voice thick with emotion. It was the first time someone in my family had validated my pain. "So," she said, her tone becoming businesslike. "You want to know if they can actually do this?" "I know they can change their will," I said. "But I have this memory of you telling me that Grandpa made sure everyone was taken care of. I do not know what I was hoping. Maybe that there was something they could not touch." A slow smile spread across Aunt Carol's face. It was a sly, knowing smile. "Your grandfather was a wise man," she said. "He loved you and Liam very much, but he was not a fool. He knew his daughter, and he knew the man she married." She stood up and walked over to an old wooden secretary desk in the corner of the room. She opened a locked drawer with a small, ornate key. She rummaged around for a moment before pulling out a thick, leather-bound folder. "Your grandfather, William, set up a number of things," she said, sitting back down and placing the folder on her lap. "He had a main will, of course. That is what your mother and father inherited from directly. Their house, their investments. That is their money to do with as they please. And it seems they have pleased to be monstrous with it." She paused, looking at me. "But he also set up an irrevocable trust. It is called the William Anderson Grandchildren's Trust." My heart leaped. "A trust for the grandchildren?" "Precisely," she said, tapping the folder. "He funded it himself, separately from his personal estate. The trust's assets were to be managed by a trustee until all of his grandchildren reached a certain age. The original trustee was your grandmother. After she passed, the trusteeship passed to your parents. Jointly." "My parents are the trustees?" I asked, my hopes sinking a little. "Yes," she said. "But being a trustee comes with rules. Big rules. They are called fiduciary duties. They have a legal obligation to manage the trust for the benefit of the beneficiaries. All the beneficiaries. They cannot just cut someone out because they are in a bad mood." "And who are the beneficiaries?" I asked, holding my breath. "You and Liam," she said. "And crucially, any of his legal issue. That means his direct descendants. In other words, his great-grandchildren. Maya and Ben." Aunt Carol looked me straight in the eye. "Your children are named beneficiaries of an irrevocable trust set up by their great-grandfather." Your parents have a legal duty to them, a duty they are currently, and it seems, quite intentionally, violating. I felt a dizzying wave of relief and vindication wash over me. I had been right. There was something. There was a safety net my grandfather had put in place all those years ago, a safety net designed to protect his family from the very people who were now trying to harm it. How do you have this? I asked, gesturing to the folder. Your grandfather made me the successor executor of his estate. Should anything happen to your grandmother? She explained. He gave me a copy of all the important documents. He said, Carol, you are the only one with enough sense to keep Helen in line. I have kept these papers safe for over 20 years. I had a feeling they might be needed one day. She opened the folder and pulled out a document. It was a copy of the trust agreement. She handed it to me. Read this section, she said, pointing to a specific paragraph. I read the words. It was all there, in dense but clear legal language. The trust was irrevocable. The beneficiaries were his grandchildren and their issue. The duties of the trustees were outlined in detail. They were required to act in the best interests of all beneficiaries, without favoritism. They were required to provide regular accounting of the trust's assets. They have never told me about this, I said, looking up at her in disbelief. Never. Not once. I have never received any accounting. I did not even know it existed. I am not surprised, Aunt Carol said grimly. They have been hiding it from you. They probably have been using the funds to prop up Liam, telling themselves it is an advance on his share. But what they have done now, with this new will, this is different. They have put their intention to defraud your children of their inheritance in writing. They had it notarized. They sent it to you themselves. She let out a dry chuckle. The fools, the arrogant fools. They have handed you the very evidence you need to nail them to the wall. What do I do now? I asked. My mind was racing. You take this, she said, pushing the copy of the trust document into my hands. You go to a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, a good one, an expert in trust and estate litigation. You show them this document and you show them the letter your parents sent you. You tell them that the trustees have been hiding the existence of the trust from a named beneficiary, and that they have now declared their intention to violate their fiduciary duty. She leaned forward, her eyes glinting. They think their money gives them power, Sarah. You are about to teach them that the law has more power. Your grandfather made sure of it. I took the document. It felt heavy in my hands, heavy with the weight of my grandfather's love and foresight. It was a shield he had crafted for me and my children decades ago. Thank you, Aunt Carol, I said, my voice choked with gratitude. I do not know how I can ever repay you. Repay me by not letting them get away with it, she said fiercely. Make them accountable. For your grandfather, for your children, and for yourself. I left Aunt Carol's apartment feeling like a different person. The sadness and despair had been burned away, replaced by a white-hot sense of purpose. I was no longer a victim in their drama. I was the one holding the script, and the final act was going to be written on my terms. The drive home was a blur. My mind was consumed with the possibilities that now lay before me. The trust document was on the passenger seat next to me, a tangible symbol of the power shift that was about to occur. My parents thought they were untouchable, wrapped in a cocoon of their own wealth and arrogance. They had forgotten about my grandfather. They had forgotten about his quiet, steadfast love for his entire family. Or more likely, they had simply chosen to ignore it, assuming no one would ever call them on it. They had underestimated my grandfather's foresight, and they had most certainly underestimated me. When I got home, Mark was waiting anxiously. How did it go? He asked the moment I walked in the door. I did not say anything. I just held up the copy of the trust document. A huge grin spread across his face. No way, he said. You found something. I found everything, I said. And for the first time in days, I laughed. It was a real, genuine laugh. It felt like breaking a fever. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I had felt my world crumble just days before, and I laid out the whole story. I told him about the irrevocable trust, about the beneficiaries, about my parents' roles as trustees, and about their legal obligations. So they have been breaking the law, Mark said, his voice a low growl. For years. They have been hiding this from you and likely using the money for Liam. Exactly, I said. And now, with this notarized letter they sent, they have formally documented their intent to continue breaking the law. They have given us a signed confession. This is incredible, he said, shaking his head in amazement. They are going to be so blindsided. They have no idea this is coming. That is the point, I said. They have spent my entire life making me feel small and powerless. They believe they hold all the cards. I want to see the look on their faces when they realize their entire hand is a bluff. The next step was to find a lawyer. I spent all of Monday researching. I did not want a small-town family lawyer. I wanted a shark. I looked for the best trust and estate litigators in the state. I made a short list and started making calls. I found a firm with a reputation for being aggressive and thorough. I scheduled a consultation for Wednesday. Walking into that law office was a new experience for me. It was all polished wood and hushed tones. I felt a little intimidated. But then I thought about Maya and Ben, and the word worthless, and the intimidation vanished, replaced by resolve. I met with a lawyer named Ms. Davis. She was in her 50s with sharp eyes and an air of calm authority. I laid out the story for her, just as I had for Aunt Carol and Mark. I gave her the letter from my parents and the copy of the trust document Aunt Carol had given me. She read everything in silence, her expression unreadable. For a long time, the only sound in the room was the rustling of paper. When she finally looked up, her face was grim. Ms. Miller, she said, this is one of the most flagrant breaches of fiduciary duty I have ever seen. A wave of relief washed over me. It was real. I was not crazy. The existence of the irrevocable trust is the key, she continued. Your parents, as trustees, have a legal and ethical obligation to manage those assets for the benefit of all beneficiaries. Hiding the trust's existence from you is a major violation. Using the funds for one beneficiary to the exclusion of others is another. And this document... She tapped the notarized letter. This is a gift. It is clear, documented evidence of their malicious intent. It will be incredibly powerful in court. So what happens now? I asked. What are my options? We have several, she said, leaning forward. Option 1 is to file a petition with the court to have your parents removed as trustees for breach of duty. We would ask the court to appoint a neutral, professional trustee to manage the trust going forward. Can we do that? I asked. Absolutely, she said. Given the evidence, it is highly likely a judge would grant it. We would also petition for a full accounting of the trust from its inception. We would find out exactly how much money has gone to your brother and demand that it be paid back to the trust. The thought of them being forced to account for every dollar they had secretly given Liam was deeply satisfying. What is option 2? I asked. Option 2 is that we start with a letter, she said. A letter from me to them, and to their lawyer. We lay out our case. We show them the trust document. We inform them that they are in breach of their duties and that you are prepared to take legal action. We offer them a chance to rectify the situation without going to court. What would that involve? I asked. It would involve them resigning as trustees immediately, Ms. Davis said, her voice firm. It would involve them providing a full accounting and repaying any misappropriated funds. And it would involve them agreeing to the appointment of a new independent trustee. Essentially, they give up all control. And if they refuse? Then we proceed with option 1, she said with a thin smile. And it will be much more unpleasant and expensive for them. A legal battle like this can drag on for years and cost a fortune in legal fees. And given the evidence you have, they would almost certainly lose. And when they lose, the judge could order them to pay for your legal fees as well. The beauty of it was stunning. They had tried to use the legal system to bully me, and now I was going to use that same system to corner them. I like option 2, I said. I want to give them a chance to surrender. I want them to know exactly what they have done and exactly what is about to happen to them if they do not comply. I want them to feel that moment of realization, the moment they know they have lost. A very reasonable approach, Ms. Davis said, nodding in approval. It is always better to try to resolve things without a protracted court battle, if possible. But we will be fully prepared for one if they choose to be difficult. They will choose to be difficult, I said with certainty. Their pride will not let them back down easily. Then we will be ready, she replied. I will draft the letter. I will need you to get me an official copy of the trust document. Your aunt's copy is a good start, but we will need one from the county records where it was filed. I can do that, I said. Good, she said. Once I have that, I will send our letter. And then we wait for their response. I left the lawyer's office feeling 10 feet tall. The plan was in motion. The pieces were moving. My parents had started a game of chess, thinking they were the only ones who knew the rules. They were about to find out I was playing a different game entirely, and I had a checkmate in my sights. Getting the official copy of the trust was my next task. Aunt Carol had told me it was filed in the county where my grandfather had lived. I took a day off work and drove to the county courthouse, a stately old building 2 hours away. I felt like a detective on a mission. The records office was in the basement, a dusty room filled with heavy ledger books and microfilm machines. I gave the clerk the information Aunt Carol had given me, my grandfather's name, the approximate year the trust was created. The clerk, a kind, elderly woman, seemed to enjoy the challenge. She led me to a row of filing cabinets. Let's see what we can dig up, she said with a smile. After about 20 minutes of searching, she pulled out a file. Here we are, she said. The William Anderson Grandchildren's Trust. My heart pounded. Seeing it there, an official public record made it all the more real. I paid for a certified copy. The clerk stamped it with a heavy seal. Holding that official document was even better than holding Aunt Carol's copy. This was undeniable. This was proof. I drove straight from the courthouse to Ms. Davis's office and dropped off the certified copy. This is perfect, she said, examining the seal. I will have the letter sent to your parents and their attorney by certified mail tomorrow morning. They should receive it by Friday. The wait was agonizing. Thursday passed in a blur of nervous energy. Friday came and I jumped every time the phone rang. I knew my parents would have received the letter. I could picture the scene. My mother opening the formal legal envelope, expecting perhaps a reply from me. And then her face as she read the words from my lawyer. The confusion turning to shock, then to rage. The frantic call to my father. The dawning horror as they realized their secret was out. The call came on Friday evening. It was not my mother or my father. It was their lawyer, the one whose name was on the envelope they had sent me. His name was Mr. Peterson. Ms. Miller, he said, his voice stiff and formal. I am calling on behalf of my clients, Robert and Helen Miller. We are in receipt of a letter from your legal counsel, Ms. Davis. I am aware, I said, my voice calm. I was sitting at my kitchen table, Mark beside me, holding my hand. My clients are very distressed by the baseless accusations in this letter, he said. Are they? I replied coolly. I was distressed by the letter they sent me. The one where they called my children worthless. There was a pause. That was a private family matter, he said. Hiding a trust from a beneficiary and misappropriating funds is not a private family matter. Mr. Peterson, I said, using the words Ms. Davis had taught me. It is a legal matter. It is a breach of fiduciary duty. My clients dispute that characterization entirely, he said. The trust you refer to was a minor family arrangement. They have always acted in the best interests of the beneficiaries. Hiding its existence from me and my children is in our best interest? I asked. Never providing an accounting is in our best interest? Directing all the funds to one beneficiary is in our best interest? He cleared his throat. As I said, my clients dispute your version of events. They are prepared to defend their actions vigorously. It was a bluff. I knew it was a bluff. They were testing me, trying to see if I would back down. Good, I said. Then I guess we will see you in court. Ms. Davis is preparing the petition to have them removed as trustees and for a full forensic accounting of the trust. I am sure you can explain to the judge why your clients felt it was appropriate to hide hundreds of thousands of dollars from a beneficiary for 2 decades. And I am sure the judge will be very interested to see the notarized letter they sent me, declaring their intent to disinherit my children from a trust they are legally entitled to. The silence on the other end of the phone was long and heavy. I could almost hear him thinking, calculating the odds. He knew he had a losing hand. Perhaps a meeting would be productive, he finally said, his tone much less confident now. To discuss a potential resolution. A resolution is outlined in Ms. Davis's letter, I said firmly. My parents will resign as trustees. They will provide a full and complete accounting of the trust, dating back to its inception. They will repay every single dollar that was improperly diverted to my brother with interest. And a neutral court-appointed professional will take over management of the trust. Those are my terms. They are not negotiable. My clients will not agree to those terms, he said, but the fight had gone out of his voice. Then they will agree to them in front of a judge, I replied. You have until Monday at 5 p.m. to give me their answer. Have a good weekend, Mr. Peterson. I hung up the phone. I looked at Mark, my heart hammering in my chest. They are panicking, I said. You were amazing, he said, pulling me into a hug. You had him completely cornered. He did not know what to do. He knows they are guilty, I said. He is just trying to do his job and get them the best possible outcome. But the best possible outcome for them is a complete surrender. They just do not know it yet. The weekend was the longest of my life. I tried to focus on the kids, to play with them and enjoy our time together. But in the back of my mind, the clock was ticking down to Monday at 5 p.m. Every time I looked at Maya and Ben, I felt a fresh wave of determination. This was for them. This was to prove that they were not worthless. They were priceless. And I would burn down anyone who said otherwise. On Monday, I tried to work, but I could not concentrate. I kept staring at the clock on my computer screen. 3 p.m., 4 p.m., 4:30. At 4:45, my personal phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Sarah? It was my father's voice. It was the first time I had spoken to him since this all began. His voice was not angry. It was tired, defeated. Yes, I said. We need to talk, he said. We are past talking, Dad, I replied, my voice hard. You have until 5 p.m. to accept my terms. That is the only conversation we are having. Sarah, please, he said, and I heard something in his voice I had never heard before. Pleading. Your mother, she is a mess. We made a mistake. A terrible mistake. Yes, you did, I said. You made a mistake when you decided my children were acceptable casualties in your games. You made a mistake when you put that cruelty in writing. And you made a mistake when you thought I would just lie down and take it. What do you want from us? He asked, his voice cracking. Do you want to destroy us? This is it. The moment of confrontation. My heart is pounding. But my voice is steady. I want what is legally and morally right, I say, switching to the present tense as the memory becomes sharp and immediate. I want you to undo what you did. I want you to follow the law. I want you to follow the rules of the trust your own father set up to protect his family from people like you. We will, he says quickly. We will agree. We will resign. We will do the accounting. Just do not take us to court. Please. The embarrassment. Your mother could not handle it. The irony is staggering. They were not worried about the embarrassment when they sent me a notarized document declaring my children worthless. They were only worried now that their own reputation was on the line. You should have thought of that before, I tell him, my voice devoid of any sympathy. You should have thought about a lot of things, but you did not. You thought only of yourselves and of Liam, as always. It was your mother, he says, trying to shift the blame. She was so angry about things. She felt you were disrespecting her. And you just went along with it? I ask. You, the big businessman, the man who understands contracts and legal obligations? You just let her write a note calling your grandchildren worthless and attach it to a legal document? I feel a surge of contempt. He is weak. He has always been weak, hiding behind her irrational anger. I did not think, he stammers. No, you did not think. I agree. You did not think I would fight back. You did not think I had any power. You thought I was still the little girl who just wanted her daddy's approval. You were wrong. There is a long, heavy silence. I can hear him breathing, a ragged sound. He knows he has lost, completely and utterly. Our lawyer will contact your lawyer, he says finally, his voice a hoarse whisper. We agree to the terms. I will be expecting the confirmation, I say. And then I hang up. I am shaking, not from fear or anger anymore, from the sheer, raw release of it all. I look at Mark, and tears start streaming down my face. They are not tears of sadness. They are tears of victory. They folded, I say through the tears. They folded completely. Mark wraps his arms around me and holds me tight. You did it, he says into my hair. You won. And I had. I had won. Not just a legal victory, but a personal one. I had stood up to the bullies who had tormented me my entire life, and I had broken their power over me. Forever. The aftermath was swift and clinical. True to my father's word, their lawyer contacted Ms. Davis the next morning and formally agreed to all of our terms. The paperwork was drawn up. My parents signed their resignations as trustees. They were forced to hire an independent accounting firm to go through 2 decades of financial records for the trust. The accounting revealed what I had suspected. Over the years, my parents had diverted nearly $400,000 from the trust to Liam. They had paid for his failed business ventures, his expensive hobbies, his down payment on his house. It was all there, in black and white. According to the terms of the trust, that money was supposed to have been invested and grown, for the benefit of all the beneficiaries. The new trustee, a stern and efficient woman named Mrs. Gable, informed my parents that the $400,000 plus calculated investment gains had to be repaid to the trust immediately. The total came to just over $600,000. My parents were horrified. They did not have that kind of liquid cash. Their wealth was tied up in their house and their retirement accounts. To pay back the trust, they would have to sell their home. The home they had lorded over me my entire life, the symbol of their success and status. They tried to fight it. Their lawyer sent letters arguing for a payment plan. Mrs. Gable, with the full backing of the law, was unmoved. The money was due. If they did not pay it, she would petition the court to force the sale of their assets. Panicked, they had no choice. They put their house on the market. At the same time, I received a package. It was from Liam. There was no letter. It was just a small velvet box. Inside was a key to his house. I knew what it was. It was a pathetic, silent plea. He was telling me that if our parents had to sell their house, they would have nowhere to go. That he could not support them. That I was destroying his life too. I dropped the key in the trash. It was not my problem. The news of the house sale sent shockwaves through our extended family. The rumors started to fly. My mother, in a desperate attempt to control the narrative, started telling people that they were downsizing because of my father's health. It was a lie, but it was all she had left. A few weeks later, my cousin Jenny called me. She was always the neutral party, the one who tried to stay out of the drama. Sarah, what is going on? She asked, her voice worried. Your mom is telling everyone your dad is sick. but Liam is telling people that you are suing them and forcing them to sell their house. I took a deep breath. I was not going to let them control this story. The truth, Jenny, I said, is that my parents were caught illegally mishandling a trust my grandfather set up for the grandchildren. They were hiding it from me and giving all the money to Liam. They got caught. And now they have to pay it back. Selling the house is the only way they can afford to. There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Is that true?" "I have the legal documents to prove it," I said, including a notarized letter from them where they call my children worthless. They did this to themselves. The story spread like wildfire. The real story. My mother's lies fell apart. People who had once admired them now looked at them with pity and contempt. Their social standing, the thing my mother prized above all else, was shattered. They sold the house for less than they had hoped. After paying back the trust and covering their legal fees, they were left with a fraction of what they once had. They could not afford to buy a new house. They had to move into a small rented apartment. And they had to move in with Liam because they could not afford the rent on their own. The golden child was now their full-time caretaker and financial support, a burden he was clearly not equipped to handle. His breezy, carefree life was over. He was trapped. The trust was now being managed properly. Mrs. Gable set up separate, protected accounts for Maya and for Ben. Their inheritance, the one their great-grandfather had intended for them, was safe. It was more than just money. It was a legacy of love, rescued from the hands of those who did not understand its value. I never spoke to my parents or my brother again. There was nothing left to say. They had made their choices and they were living with the consequences. Sometimes, late at night, I would think about them in that small, cramped apartment. The three of them, suffocating in the toxic mess they had created. I did not feel pity. I did not feel anger anymore. I just felt nothing. They had become strangers to me. My life, on the other hand, had never been better. A weight I had carried my entire life was gone. The constant need for their approval, the sting of their dismissals, the pressure to be the perfect daughter. It had all vanished. I was free. My family, my real family, was Mark and Maya and Ben. We were happy. We were healthy. We were a team. One evening, a few months after it was all over, I was tucking Maya into bed. She had a painting she had made for me on her nightstand. It was a picture of our family, all four of us, holding hands under a giant smiling sun. "Mommy," she said, "why don't we see Grandma and Grandpa anymore?" I had been wondering what I would tell them when they asked. I sat on the edge of her bed and took her hand. "Because, sweetie," I said, choosing my words carefully. "They were not very kind. And in our family, we choose to be around people who are kind." She seemed to accept that. "Like Aunt Carol?" she asked. "Yes," I said, smiling. "Just like Aunt Carol." She snuggled down under her covers. "Okay," she said. "I love you, Mommy." "I love you more," I whispered, kissing her forehead. As I walked out of her room, I looked at the notarized document one last time before sealing it in an envelope and putting it away in a safe deposit box. It was a reminder. A reminder of the day my parents tried to tell me my children were worthless. They had failed. In their attempt to tear my world down, they had only succeeded in destroying their own. They had handed me the weapon, the proof, and the motivation. They had taught me that sometimes the only way to protect your family is to burn the bridges to the one you came from. And I finally understood that my children were not worthless. They were worth everything, and I had proven it. The silence from my parents' side of the family was the most peaceful sound I had ever known. They had finally learned what it felt like to be small, to be powerless. And I had finally learned what it felt like to be free.